her dad was had some Indian in him, a good bit of Indian in him, and I have a little Indian in me.
You know what tribe? Do you know what tribe?
I wish you hadn't asked me. I can't. What's the one with the C? I can't think.
Choctaw, Comanche,
Yeah, I think it was a.
Cherokee.
I think it was a Cherokee. I think it's Cherokee. Yeah, give me a half second.
Sure.
Let's quote that correct.
Oh, well, we're not going to use that.
Oh, you're not? Okay,
No.
okay. I thought maybe you might want to. What we're going to use that for?
We'll be talking about the Indiana part anyway, so.
Okay.
All right, then. Let's talk about your family came into the area when?
In the late 1800s, about 1870, came into this area from Bedford, around Bedford, Indiana. That's the Souders came here from Bedford, Indiana.
Mm-hmm. And basically, when they came here, what sort of activities were they involved in?
Well, this was a very rural community, undeveloped and everything, and it became a truck farming, as we call it, a farming community, raised cantaloupes and tomatoes and corn and crops like that. It was a farming community. That was about the only employment there was here is farming, and maybe a little bit of dairying with small amount of milk cows.
So back at that time when your family came here in the 19th century, how many people were living here?
I'm assuming probably about 5 or 6 families of maybe 25 people in the what we call the Hearst area. Some came from Tennessee, some came from Kentucky, and of different families, and some came from Indiana.
But I mean, even your family is a great example of healing the wounds after the Civil War. I mean, you have the two groups getting together. I think that's pretty neat, right?
Right. The only thing that the Souders were on the Union side, and my great grandfather William Letchworth Hearst was a Confederate soldier, and so that's probably one reason he didn't like the Souders too well, because even though his daughter married a Souder, that he was a Confederate soldier, and he was a prisoner of war during the Confederate. And he was, for a while, he stayed prisoner because he wouldn't sign the proclamation that they had to sign.
Now, back in the early days in the 19th century, what was geographically, what was the center of Hearst at that time?
What is now known as Highway 10, used to be 183, was really the center of Hearst. There was 1 and 2 grocery stores there on old Highway on Highway 10 or 183 it used to be, and that was just the center of Hearst. That's where the school was there on where what is now on the school was an elementary school, and through the 9th grade back in the early days, and there were other schools prior to that which was considered the Hearst school too, but the major school in Hearst began around the early 1900s there on Highway 10 at the corner of Norwood and Hearst Boulevard, or Highway 10 and Norwood, and there was this old 2-story school there, and then there was 2 grocery stores there. It was most of the people, I mean, they traded at those grocery stores, but for major items and stuff and clothing and what have you, they went either into Fort Worth or Arlington, and that's where they, in Fort Worth, of course, 15 miles away. It just seemed like it's a long way there with some in wagons and some old Model T vehicles was a mode of travel.
All-day trip over there and back, yeah.
They would take their did a lot of bartering. They had the butter that they made from the milk and eggs. Had chickens, had chicken farms and what have you, or chickens, and so they'd take their eggs and butter into the stores in Fort Worth, and actually I think the first stop was Riverside right there, which is Fort Worth, and one of the big stores there where they'd trade their eggs and butter for goods, and so that was kind of some of their mode of.
Now, do you remember, I was talking to Police Chief Watson, and he was telling me that when he was a kid, or actually back in the 30s, he said that he remembered going hunting down by the old Randall Mill and seeing parts of the machinery there. Do you remember that?
Right, exactly right. Yeah, I'm nearly as old as Joe, and I was born out here in Hurst, and so down in the whenever he went there. Of course, the old Randall Mill was on the river down there, and that was owned by the Randall family, where they grind their corn or wheat into a meal, and that was, of course, there's hunting along the river there, but the major hunting in the early days, when Fourth Sand and Gravel moved in and bought, in the bottom, they began to mining gravel and sand and gravel, and they made those pits down there, and of course that became a good duck hunting. The ducks going from the north to the south during the winter and the summer. Well, great duck hunting down there, and that's where I did a lot of hunting. And of course, squirrel hunting was real good, and quail hunting. But
what do you remember about the mill when you were a kid?
Well, the only thing I remember about the mill was that it was nearly closed down by the time when I was around, I guess, whenever I was early age. I don't really remember any milling going on down there after I become of age to remember things. But I remember the old mill was still there, but I don't think it was in 1925. It wasn't in operation. So that was prior to 1925, when the mill was used by the people to go take their corn or grain there to be ground into.
Now, where exactly was it located?
If you're going south, which is we call Precinct Line Road, now go south till you come to the river bridge and the river, and it was on the right-hand side of the bridge, about 200 yards, and it was on the south bank of the river there. And there's probably still some remains of the mill there now, such as the foundation brick or cement or something like that. But the building and everything is gone, and it may not be now. For a long time, though, that the mill had shut down and everything, and it remained there for years, which is the old Randall Mill.
Well, tell me about Billy's picnics every year.
About the what?
Billy's picnics, Uncle Billy's picnics.
Oh, well, every year they had picnics. I guess the community picnics, all the families there would have a community picnic, and of course, I understand he died a month before I was born, so I understand from what my mother told me and my dad told me that he was a great fiddle player, and we have that fiddle in his old fiddle that he had in the heritage room at the library. And so he was a great fiddle player, and he always played the fiddle for the dances and everything that they had at these picnics. And he was a great entertainer, and very good, a lot of humor to him. He was always, as you say, joking or very humorous with his speech and what have you.
Now, so in the early days, you had mainly a rural farming community.
Right.
And how did that change over the years? Did the railroad change that at all? Or?
Well, that's where they got the name of Hurst from. The railroad came through, and the Rock Island Railroad, and they came out here to get right away. And that he had a lot of William Letchworth Hurst had a lot of property along the railroad, or where the railroad is in there, and he owned a lot of property, and they got the right of way from him, and of course, so they built a station there and called it the Hurst Station, and that's really what originated why Hurst became the town of Hurst. It was always considered Hurst because it had a Hurst Station on the Rock Island Railroad track there, and that was early 1900s, and that became they had passenger service there as well as freight service there.
Mm-hmm. So, and then talk about when did your mom go in there and put her store and cafe in?
Well, T.J. Dickey was family had the first grocery store, and they had the grocery store down there by the railroad track, and back then, early days, and that was really the first grocery store in the area, Hearst area. Is T.J. Dickey family had that, and they moved that one whenever the highway on Highway 10, where it is now, where the road was going from Fort Worth to Dallas through Mosier Valley and what's called Pipeline Road that way to Dallas through Irving and to Dallas. Well, they moved it up where presently Highway 10 is, there about where that paint company is there. Kelly Moore Paint Company is where they moved that store to, and that remained there until the early, I believe until the late 30s, and then in 1936, my mother and dad went and built the grocery store out of the home. They just added on to our home there. We lived right across the street from the school, and that was our home there. And then they added on to that, the front of it, and made a grocery store there in 1936, right at the end, 36, and right at the end of the Depression. I mean, things were really tough in those years around 31 through 36. That was, and the Depression was letting up a little bit in 36, and they built the grocery store there in 36, and continued to in a frame building there, going on to our home there. And then about 1940, in 39 or 4, about 1940, the Texas Highway Department made a 2-lane highway out of Highway 183 at that time, it was called, and then they took part of our property, and mother and dad rebuilt a brick building there, which is still standing there now, and operated that grocery store there and feed store and general merchandise until around 1954. That's when Bell Helicopter came in and Hearst began to grow, and then the supermarkets began to come out here. The first supermarket was there on Highway 10, and we felt like we either had to get out of the grocery business or try to get big. So my mother closed the grocery store and cafe down in around the 1955.
So where was the cafe?
It joined on to the it's still there too. It's joined on to the block grocery store.
And so what was the grocery store and what was the cafe? What were their names?
Souder Grocery and Emma's Cafe.
Cafe.
As my mother's name is Emma's Cafe and Souder Grocery.
Well, let's talk about, I mean, back in those days, those really were a hub of a lot of the social activity. What do you remember about those days when people would come in and visit in a cafe and in a grocery store? Tell me about that.
Well, of course, we had to the east was Mosier Valley, which is still there, is a black settlement there, and they were great people. The Mosier Valley people were there. Some of them were from the slave days, but they were our dear customers. We had a lot of trade from the black people as well as the white people that lived in the area too was our customers there, and come and get their groceries. And back in those days, I say, right after the Depression and everything, nobody had any money, but it was from week to week or month to month to get their pay from wherever they were working, and you had to do credit business, and some of it was good and some of it was bad. So that was some of the things you had to work with and running a grocery store out there. But the people, traded, the major trading was there, and as I say, when you go for clothing or other merchandise, they would go into Fort Worth or Arlington to trade there. And what were you asking about the?
Well, I'm saying on a typical day, if you and I walked into the cafe, what would we see? I mean, we'd see people visiting.
Oh well, you'd see people visiting. The trade in the cafe was major. That began when it became a major highway between Fort Worth and Dallas and Irving there. Well, you had a lot of truckers like Swift and Armour trucks go by, and they always stopped there for breakfast or lunch or dinner. You had a lot of trucking trade back then in the cafe. Now, that wasn't for the grocery store. The grocery store, of course, is local people in the grocery store. But in the cafe, well, you had a lot of truckers, Armour and Swift drivers, and the different gasoline companies, Texaco truck drivers going from one area, from Fort Worth area to Dallas to.
Now, what do you remember about Hearst during the Depression? I mean, paint us a picture of what it looked like.
Well, I mean, it's just a little, I guess, a little country community there in the Depression days, and as I say, everybody either was a farmer or those that were seeking employment worked on the farm for the people who had the large tracts of land who farmed. You might have employment there, and no other employment other. In the later, I'm saying, I think it's early in the late 30s that Fort Worth Sand and Gravel started mining out there, and that became a employment area for it. It was major employment back then. A lot of people worked at the Fort Worth Sand and Gravel because it was a big mining, and a lot of gravel and sand mining in the south of 183 or Highway 10 there south of Hearst. And you can see down in there now, the gravel pits still exist. They haven't been completely filled in, and there's still some mining going on down there south of the railroad track along Trinity Boulevard in there.
So from the 19th century really up to World War II, Hearst was pretty much the same.
Right, exactly right.
You didn't see much change during your early days?
No, it wasn't a lot of change. The only thing, the highway helped it by traffic through there. Whenever they came in there, the highway came in about a two-lane highway to connect Fort Worth out through Belknap into Highway 10, 183 as we called it back then, on in through Mosier Valley, on into Irving that way.
Give me a before and after picture for someone who didn't know what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Hearst before and then after when Bell came in.
Okay.
Talk about the change there.
Okay. Well, of course, being a rural community, I mean, some of the employment, some people were employed in Fort Worth or some in Arlington out of there too, but locally we had no employment there at all before Bell came in, other than the Fort Worth Sand and Gravel, as was said. It was mining there. That was employment there. But other than that, there was not just a rural community with 2 grocery stores and no major factory. But till when Bell came in, then that's when it really began to grow, and the boom hit. That Bell started with their employment, and people who employed at Bell, many of them bought homes in Hearst, and that's when the home building began in Hearst in the early 51 or 52, around in there. And of course, Hearst was incorporated around 53, I believe, was an incorporated area. And so that's when Bell came in, and I think they around 54 is actually when they opened the plant there. Well, that's when you saw a big change in the amount of people begin to move into Hearst, and of course the home building business became a job employment for a lot of people. You had a lot of contractors and subcontractors and people who were employed with the home building business, and you begin to see a big change. And the first one of the first developments in Hearst was right across the street from Bell, which you call Bell Helicopter. Employees, a lot of them bought in there and worked at Bell. That was the first project, I believe, was started in Hearst. And of course, the school, I mentioned a little bit about the school system now. Back prior to the growth in the area from Bell Helicopter, prior to that, the school was, you went through the 9th grade in Hearst. We didn't have a high school. We had a rural independent school district. We weren't a rural school district and not a independent school district. Hearst students first through 9th, and that back then you only went through the 11th grade. From after you finished the 9th grade in Hearst, you either went to the Fort Worth school system or Birdville was a high school there. Well, most of the students from Hearst went to Carter Riverside or Riverside High School to finish their work there. That's where I went from. After I finished at Hearst, I went to Riverside High School and finished high school there, and then from there Texas Wesleyan, now it's Texas Wesleyan University.
But it must have been amazing for you seeing all that boom and that growth. I mean, here was this sleepy little town. Talk about how did it feel for you to see that?
Well, it was a great feeling because, as I say, that's when the growth started. The developments went in there. I mean, you know, we're becoming this city. I mean, you know, and of course, it incorporated and became the town of Hurst and the city of Hurst, and so it was a great feeling to see after a little sleepy town, rural town, and a poor area of employment and homes there. I mean, you just didn't have the money or facilities to grow any. And so, but whenever this boom started and Bell moved in, well, then you had the demand for homes, and I mean, just a great feeling. And then James Doss, a banker from Weatherford, came there and built the first shopping center there on Highway 10. And Worth Food Market was a major grocery chain then, and he built this there on Highway 10, which still is there. There's a sporting goods outfit there in the whole shopping center now, but you had Woolworth and Worth Food Market were two major tenants in there, and Myers Department Store was there. So I mean, you know, we kind of become a little more cityfied, I guess you'd say, because of that growth, and then we went from a population after that to about 1,500 or 2,000, and then from then on you can see what's happened today. The growth, we're around 38,000 population, and a tremendous amount of businesses, and especially I might have to mention Northeast Mall, which is one of our major businesses here, and it's big plans to.
Well, I was going to walk you through that. Okay, so we had Bell come in. So why has the growth been sustained, and why has it kept going?
Well, I think by location, we're at the intersection of Highway 820, 121, and 183, and 377 feeds in this area too. I think by location, we were right in the hub, I'd say, there. If you'll see our interchange there with Northeast Mall, by location, Hurst, people began to move here and business began to move here because of the increase in population, also many homes being built. And so I would say that due to that location being the hub area, that Hurst was a strategic point for the move in businesses and the growth in business, and with population exploding, well, then you had the customers there for the businesses, and so it began to grow. And we were fortunate to land Northeast Mall was the first mall in this area, and we were fortunate that they selected that site there because it's in the city of Hurst. And of course, it's been a great asset to us on the development of Hurst because of the sales tax, which was passed in some few years back, and that helped us in our hold the ad valorem tax down, and also be able to expand our city and have the modern facilities that we have now, and the quality of life city that we have is due to the having the monetary facilities and money to operate on for the city, and so it's been tremendous for us, the city of Hurst, to have the location and have the facilities here that came here, and then the home building surrounding it.
Well, so walk me through it. We started it at down at Highway 10, and then talk about the northward growth. How did that go? Okay,
our first major was on Highway 10, which used to be at 183, and now we call it the Highway 10 or Hurst Boulevard. Was the only growth was there was this first shopping center I told you was developed there on Highway 10. It is now in West Hurst Boulevard, or Hurst Boulevard, and we then the next step was Pipeline Road. Then the home building in between Highway 10 and Pipeline Road was homes all through there. Well, then it on Pipeline Road became a major business area, and so business were built all along Pipeline Road. Well, the next step north of Pipeline Road was track all through there where the new homes were built, and more homes built. Then Bedford Road became the next major shopping area and business area, and then as they grew north of Bedford Road with the homes in there, then Grapevine Highway became the next major shopping area on Grapevine Highway, and today it's becoming a large area. But Pipeline Road and Bedford Road led out to 820, which was built along in that growth area, and built out to that, and then that's where at Bedford Road and 820, which was 121 or 183, they had that's where the center became on the major shopping area with a northeast mall. Then directly across 820 to the north, of course, that's not in Hearst, and North Richland Hills capitalize on that strategic area, and they have a lot of freestanding, not a mall, but freestanding big commercial buildings there, businesses there.
Now, talk about what the Airport Freeway 121 and 820, and then DFW Airport, what did all of that do to Hearst?
Well, of course, the airport freeway, as we call it, that really brought the traffic to Hearst, through Hearst, and on to the airport for the use of the airport. And the tremendous growth that the airport has had there, that's where it become a major employment for our people that live in Hearst. I forget, I saw the figure the other day in the paper, what the amount of employment they have there. And of course the business people, and it's just a central point from the airport is for communication for all over the world now. And so the airport tremendously helped our area because of bringing in people here, business people, to do business in Fort Worth or Dallas, and also for the transportation for the people to travel. And it has been a tremendous amount of help to our city and to all the other cities. Some of them kind of resented it a little bit because that they don't want it to fly over their city or not. But my goodness, Hearst, and as you say, Hearst, Euless, and Bedford, and Grapevine, and Colleyville, well, we just little small communities. But the airport, we began to mushroom from the airport. Bell Helicopter was, of course, was the first major one for us. But when the airport came in, and I guess it's the second largest airport in the world now, as far as transportation wise, and so, I mean, we appreciate the airport very much in what it meant to our economy.
Now, when did 121 and 820 come in?
820 and 121, I'm going to say in the late, early 70s, and I think it's in the late 60s or the early 70s is when 820 became a reality, and 121 or 183, which goes, they moved 183 on to Airport Freeway, which and then called kind of, I guess you'd call a spur, is 10 now and not 183. But 183 and 121 runs on Airport Freeway, and then as you know, when 121 hits there in Bedford, it spurs off to the north and goes and hits 120 and 1 north.
But those two roads really did a lot too,
right? Right, sure did. And as you say, whenever Airport Freeway was built in 820, then that just made the hub more so, and the traffic is tremendous, as you can see, and it brings in business to the area, to Hearst, Euless, and Bedford, and North Richland Hills, and Richland Hills. And of course, Hearst got their fair share of the business and the businesses, and which we're grateful for.
Have you ever heard any figures on how many millions of cars go by there?
I've heard it, but I couldn't. If I'd quote it'd be. But it's one of the largest concentration of cars in the state of Texas. I'm sure Houston has the next largest in Dallas, but that is one of the largest concentration
of cars.
Of cars.
Now, what was it like being a postmaster? Talk about those years. You got to know everyone here pretty well. It was a lot of fun.
Well, right. Hearst, back in or prior to 1945, Hearst was got their mail delivery out of Arlington and Fort Worth. Fort Worth came out to Precinct Line Road from Fort Worth as Rural Route 1 out of Fort Worth, and served from Precinct Line Road north and back west. Arlington had two rural routes that came out. One came out, they came out through the Trinity River bottom road through to Hearst. One went and covered Euless, Route 1 or Route 3. I believe Route 1 covered Euless. The other, Route 3, covered Hearst and Bedford then. So your rural mail delivery came out of Arlington and